Hello there.
Hello! Are you back from your trip?
I am. Well,
how'd it go?
Physically, I'm back. Mentally, it sent me places.
Sure.
And I'm going to tell you about it.
Oh, okay. Well, that's why I called. So,
well, obviously,
here we go.
It's best you just expect it at this point.
It is.
And I'm going to preface this. I'm going to preface this whole story with a blanket statement, okay?
Okay.
That this is an oversimplification, okay? But I think in general, that's what a lot of history boils down to, is hearing individual stories that kind of had these butterfly effects on history and how they all kind of come together is the real butterfly effect. But I have a question for you. This is for my own sake. What do you remember about Thomas Jefferson as a president? Like anything in particular that he did? What comes to mind?
See, and I feel bad because I know, like, you have a connection with him.
Okay, well, I will tell you.
I can't actually think of anything right now.
I will tell you, and you will,
Okay.
you will remember immediately.
Okay.
But I'm also going to touch on why you say I have a connection with him, because it has been my long-running joke for years at this point since I first discovered this fact that Thomas Jefferson was a redhead. And I have frequently said that by default, because he was our only redheaded president, made him our best president, which offended several people, particularly Hamilton fans. But but I had to go confirm that fact for myself as I was researching all of this other stuff. And one of these answers, and I did not check the validity of this because it broke my brain so hard. I was like, I'm done looking at that. But that apparently George Washington was a redhead before his hair went white, which is how, like, we all know him. And I have not verified that. I do not know if it's true. And it sent me down such a mental spiral. I did not confirm it because the very next thing also said that Alexander Hamilton also was like an auburn, like a red brown. And I was just like, this is too much. I can't take this, because I have been saying that about Thomas Jefferson long before Hamilton came out, and I'm talking about Hamilton too much, and that's fine. But I did very quickly try to just like confirm for like the 18th time in my life that Thomas Jefferson was indeed a redhead. And there was a quote, and this does not matter at all. It doesn't matter at all. But there was a quote though that said about the founding fathers as a whole, most of them were redheads and the others wanted to be. And I laughed so hard about it. And it does not matter to the story whatsoever. And I can confirm at the very least that Thomas Jefferson was a redhead, which actually makes the story harder to tell, because what I was trying to get at, what I think most people remember Thomas Jefferson as a president for, like the big thing, like every president kind of has like their big one thing, especially like long ago presidents that we like remember one very specific thing that they did. Thomas Jefferson's is typically the Louisiana Purchase.
Right. Yes, this makes sense.
Doubled the size of the young country, all this stuff.
Right.
But what I'm going to tell you today is that he didn't do much.
Okay.
And that one specific shipwreck might have led to that whole event. And again, that's where I did the blanket statement of like the oversimplification of the issue. But again, in history, I just think there's all these like little things, little chance things that kind of lead to overarching historical things that are just fascinating to me. And on this trip was where I got the first nugget about this ship and everywhere that it went or didn't really. But,
Okay.
Yeah.
Thomas Jefferson was a redhead.
Thomas Jefferson was a redhead. Can confirm.
Was he like a redhead, or was he like strawberry blonde? 'Cause like I always thought it was like more of a strawberry blonde sort of situation.
He's not red, my red.
Okay.
I do think it was a bit more strawberry blondish.
Okay. Anyway, sorry. Just
no worries. I'm going to go back even further, which this in itself was an interesting experience for me because I have told you extensively. You, by default, probably know more about the Revolutionary War just because that's the era that I talk about all the time. But
yes, I never found any of this out for myself.
Would you say it's the war you know the most about as far as American history?
American history? Yeah, because I think most of what I know about World War II is what was happening between the European countries. Mm-hmm. So
as far as American history, right.
What's
funny. We're going to go back before it actually was American history. So let me just negate everything we just said there and go back to when the colonies were still okay being British, to the 7 Years' War, which...
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. 1762-63-ish. Britain was still very in control of the colonies and accepted control, not just like begrudgingly control by that point. And they had the 7 Years' War, which could, depending on who you talk to or who you read or whatever, people like to say it could have been the first real world war because it was fought on several continents. The main players were Britain and France. So they did fight on the homeland, but they also fought amongst their colonies in North America and Africa. At this time, France controlled most of the parts that were explored of Canada, Louisiana, and Florida. Spain was a part of the 7 Years' War as well, but not quite such a big contender in this regard. So the end of the 7 Years' War, France knew that it was losing, knew that it had lost. France had controlled the Louisiana territory, and France went to Spain behind Great Britain's back. I just want to say that. They signed a treaty I'm sorry, I'm mixing my dates up. 1754 was when the 7 Years' War began. 62 to 63 is when it was ending.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Mixing them up. There's a lot of dates. I try not to bog it down with dates because I just don't care about them, but
I'm not sure I've even absorbed a single date.
That's okay. 1754, 7 Years' War began. 62, 63, there was some contestation on which year. It doesn't matter.
Right.
But France knew that it was losing to Britain in this 7 Years' War.
Okay.
So in that time frame, a short time before France signed its treaty and surrendered to Great Britain, France went to Spain and said, I'm going to treaty the Louisiana territory to you. Great Britain did end up getting most of the Canada colonies, what would become Canada, the colonies from Great Britain, and Florida went to Great Britain as well. But anyway, but so Spain was like, it was kind of like France's way of being like, you know what, I'm losing this, but like, be my friend. I will give you this land. And Spain was kind of like, this would be a good barrier between the Great Britain colonies and Mexico. It would be like a good buffer is kind of why they were like, all right, you're like, yeah, we'll support you in other realms and we'll take Louisiana. And that happened in 62, right? So Spain still controlled it. The American Revolution happened. 1776 began. All of this stuff. In 1795, so New Orleans, the port city that, the Mississippi River, that became like a major hub for all trade had to go through New Orleans. And in 1795, Spain actually did sign a treaty with America, with the new fledgling country, that they could send their ships safely through the New Orleans port, through the harbor.
Okay.
And that was with Spain. And I don't know why this is so. I've never been to New Orleans. I don't know much beyond this history of it, but I do know that they talk all the time about the French Quarter. And actually for a big chunk of time of all of the development of that area, it was a Spanish colony.
Fascinating.
Yes. Okay. So then what happened? 1795, America, very young country. Spain actually controls the Louisiana territory, which we think of Louisiana as the state of Louisiana, but it was actually most of like the Mississippi River to the mountains, to the Rockies. So almost every state that you and I have lived in, it wasn't just the state of Louisiana. So Napoleon, we're going to bring in Napoleon.
Yep. I knew it.
Seizes power in France in 1799 in a coup.
Right.
Coup. That's a fun word. Anyway, so Napoleon, and this is, again, there's so many side things to this. There's so many side things, but he had decided that he wanted to regain French holding in the New World. But Spain owned that territory. But now I'm going to talk about why Spain was willing to give it back.
Okay.
So the colony of Louisiana was not doing well economically. And this is a modern day problem. Tell me why we haven't solved this issue already. They were floundering. The whole colony was floundering because they had too much paper money and not enough of anything of value to back it up. So the economy was struggling, which sounds way too familiar for me. It hurts my feelings. With this in mind, because Spain had always had Mexico in the colonizing era, so they actually sent out a ship from Mexico that was meant to land in New Orleans called the El Cazador. It was a military-esque ship. They loaded it with 450,000 reales, most of them silver, which were known as 8 reales, which is the pieces of 8. If you wanna talk pirates, tie it back to your.
Oh,
that was a genuine form of money. The pieces of 8 were Spanish reales.
Weird.
Okay. Yeah. So in 1780,
I can dig it.
There's a lot happening here. A lot of economics and politics and shenanigans, because there's always shenanigans.
There are always shenanigans.
Always shenanigans. So I'm gonna say my topic sentence now in the middle.
Your topic sentence.
Neither at the beginning. Neither at the beginning or the end, which is where they're supposed to go. And this is where I say it's an oversimplification. But I am going to say that the entire growth of the country was because of this one ship. And that it did not make it to where it was supposed to.
Wait, which country?
America. The United States of America. That country.
Oh, that country.
This is a lot of random facts to come together. This is a lot of random facts to come together. Okay, so the El Cazador, the ship carrying 450,000 reales, true silver. Spain was trying to get it to Louisiana, to the Louisiana territory, to pay their soldiers, to stabilize the economy. It was kind of the Wild West of the time frame. Like, people just, didn't really follow the laws that did exist. And that was always a thing with any colony of any country, was just like, how do we control it?
A little bit of anarchy.
A little bit of anarchy. Just sprinkle it on in there.
Yeah.
And so they were sending this money. They were trying to get this money from Mexico, because that was a little bit more well established for Spain. So this ship set sail from Mexico January 11th of 1784. So had all of this silver money on board. This was going to stabilize the economy. It was going to make Spain stabilize their colonies. It was going to bring power back to them in their colonizing efforts. That ship never made it through the Gulf of Mexico, never made it to New Orleans. So the economy was not stabilized.
Right.
Which is why one can arguably say this led to the following events. But that was butterfly effect, trying to pinpoint the one thing that led to Spain being willing to give it back to France later, was that the ship disappeared. This massive stabilizing effort just disappeared. It was gone. It launched in January. They did not declare it missing at sea until June of that year.
Which, I guess, if I'm thinking about ships.
Right.
And back then, and navigating, and how long it took, and how, little communication there could be.
Right.
I feel like that makes sense.
It does make sense, but I do just want to put in context, it only had to go across the Gulf of Mexico.
Oh, that's not that.
It was coming from Mexico.
Excessive then. Okay.
It was coming from Mexico. Yes. And this is a side fact about the ship. It was found, actually fairly recently it was found, but it was found in 300 feet of water, 50 miles off the Louisiana coast.
So it wasn't even that far, or did it move?
I don't think it moved enough to say that it wasn't that far.
Okay.
And it bothers me. This bothers me to no end, and this is a personal thing, and that's fine. I cannot find why it sank. I have searched that question in every variation I can find. I have read numerous articles telling me the same thing: when it launched, where it was found, what it was carrying, that it led to the next events, arguably, and not a single one of them could tell me what sank this ship.
Weird.
And I don't know if it was deliberate omissions, if nobody else was as fascinated by this as I was, or if they genuinely don't know.
Right.
But it bothers me.
I have to believe that either it's been omitted or people just genuinely don't know, because I can't imagine the second one. I'm
going to go with don't know, because that just
such, yeah.
Why would you omit it if you did know? But I when you're searching
especially
things
now,
and you change, and it was, when you're Googling things and you like think of every possible way to word a question, that was me trying to figure out why this ship went down.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of silver. And when they found the shipwreck, they found the silver. I think that's what bothers me as well. Because it's like, well, it wasn't attacked for its money.
Right. Because otherwise there would be no more silver there.
Right. But yeah, it was found in 1993. So more than 200 years later when they finally found it. And actually, when it was found, it was actually like fishing nets got caught and they were like, what's going on? And by the time they were able to pull their nets up, they found what they thought were rocks, but it was the silver coins, like essentially cemented together on the ocean floor.
What?
On the Gulf floor?
They weren't even out looking for this thing anymore. They were just...
Yeah. That particular ship wasn't looking for it. Somebody probably was.
Oh, well.
Okay.
Yeah.
But back to Thomas Jefferson getting credit for the Louisiana Purchase. Okay. So this ship sank 1784. That was Spain's attempt to stabilize its entire Louisiana colony. Mexico for Spain was stable-ish. But it had enough silver to back up the paper money problem, the financial economy problems in Louisiana. They attempted to send the ship. The ship disappeared. Silver never made it. So in that time, that was before 1795 when Spain agrees to allow the American ships to go into the New Orleans harbor to use the Mississippi River as their shipping port.
Okay.
But Napoleon comes to power via the coup in France in 1799. He has thoughts of regaining the glory of the French Empire in the Americas. So he goes to Spain and he says, would you give Louisiana back to us? And they do. In 1800, Spain agrees to give the Louisiana territory back to the French. But they don't actually do anything. Like he doesn't send troops immediately. And this is another one of those things where there's lots and lots of things happening in history that kind of lead to things happening. Essentially, he had sent troops to a slave uprising in modern day Haiti. I listened to how to pronounce this word 16 times and I'm still going to do it wrong. Saint-Domingue. It almost looks like Dominique, but Domingue.
Oh, but it's got a G instead of a Q.
Yeah, there was...
I think I've seen that, yeah.
There were former slaves that had freed themselves that were revolting, and that was a French-controlled island. And so Napoleon was getting ready to send troops to retake over the Louisiana territory. Yellow fever was ravaging the soldiers that were trying to regain control in modern day Haiti.
Well, then that's fine.
I'm not saying it with much tone for a reason, but so at that time, so then Thomas Jefferson was president, and there were two gentlemen when they heard that Spain had relinquished control of the Louisiana territory back to France. And at the time, the United States was very young. Who their allies were was kind of gray. Obviously, now we have this very strong alliance with Great Britain. But I mean, that was a little close to Revolution era. And it kind of became this thing of like, okay, we need to do something. We need to buy the port off of them. We need to ally with them. And if we can't ally with them, we need to ally with Great Britain. And again, that wasn't the most desirable option. Like that was kind of their last resort. So Thomas Jefferson actually sent representatives to France. It was a man called Robert Livingston, which kind of had a hand, helped the committee, Thomas Jefferson included, who drafted the Declaration of Independence, and a man named James Monroe, who actually also became a president. Nobody remembers his name, but he did. I want to say he was the fifth or sixth. He was
definitely in the first 12.
Yes, he was. Fifth or sixth.
Because of Mr. Harris, I think. Yeah.
Nailed it. God. You did it.
Because he just kept putting them up on the wall.
Yeah, he did. He did. Crushed it. He was one of my favorite history teachers. God, if you ever hear this, sir, this is your fault. Okay, so Thomas Jefferson, president, heard that Spain was giving control of the Louisiana territory back to the French and was like, oh no. This is not okay. So he sent these men, he sent this collection of representatives to France with the intent, he told them, buy New Orleans. Just the city of New Orleans. And I read several articles The typical range was 3 million to 10 million that he was willing to offer for New Orleans and like the western part of Florida, which if you're up on your geography, there's actually 2 states between those 2 things now.
Yeah.
Mississippi and Alabama are between there, but I think, Florida was a little bigger at one point. So was Louisiana. Okay. So there's articles saying that Thomas Jefferson gave them the authority saying, get New Orleans. We need New Orleans. And that's all he requested. I just need to emphasize that Thomas Jefferson sent these men to France 2 years after the French took the Louisiana territory back from Spain and said, we need New Orleans. Spend anywhere from 3 to 10 million. I'll go with 10 million just for the sake of the story. $10 million is what you can spend. I want that strip of territory. Napoleon, again, was having a hard time in Haiti. He was losing soldiers. He wasn't gaining control that he wanted to. He had problems back home, all of this stuff. So these men showed up asking for New Orleans. And Napoleon and his representatives said, tell you what, take the whole territory, 15 million.
Uh-huh.
And a few things, just to wrap this up in a neat little bow. Thomas Jefferson did not technically have the explicit authority to buy land for the country.
Okay.
That was one of the giant constitutional debates of their time. Okay. After all the getting starting ones.
Makes sense.
And also, I just love the foresight and like James Monroe and Robert Livingston being like done. Like they were authorized up to 10 million. And they were like, no. We can do 15. We'll do it. Yep. We'll definitely do that. Yep. Because they were going to buy the city and they were handed the Louisiana Purchase.
Right.
Because Napoleon was overwhelmed. And the ship sank. So Spain was overwhelmed.
Right.
And that's why it's so hard for me, because Thomas Jefferson was a redhead, to say, but did he really do that though?
Oh.
And again, I said it at the beginning, this is an oversimplification of several events and several things that had to come together to make this happen. And Great Britain had to defeat France in the 7 Years' War to begin with, long before the American Revolution. And I want to know how the ship sank.
That's a fair question. And I feel like, I wonder if we'll ever know. Or did all of the information about it?
It was found in 93. So I feel like if anybody cared to know,
they would have figured it out in the last 30 years, right?
Yeah.
Maybe.
I feel like there's more digging that I could do, but I was still so excited about the story that I told you before I went that deep into that shipwreck. It was so close.
Yeah, even by like small amount of water to traverse.
Yeah.
Like, relative to the world, right? Like,
right.
Or any,
I mean, 50 miles was a hefty chunk in that day and age, but
yeah, no motors, you're just dealing with.
They were in the Gulf though. Like, I mean, this is the other thing that bothers me. Like Spain looked for that ship. Obviously, they had money on that ship.
Right.
So like, even if you just said there was a hurricane around that time, like,
yeah.
But arguably, again, and this is the oversimplification, arguably, Thomas Jefferson had almost next to nothing to do with the Louisiana Purchase. And if that ship had not sunk, Spain would not have been so ready to give that territory back to France. And if France wasn't so overwhelmed with everything else that Napoleon was trying to do, those men went in there to buy the port of New Orleans.
Right.
Effectively.
Just the port.
They asked for a little bit of other land, but effectively. And they weren't even asking for like the whole Mississippi River Valley, which arguably was almost as important as the New Orleans port, because that was how they got all of their goods from the north to the shipping harbor. Like,
right.
And he heard about it after.
That's what's in the history books about him.
Thomas Jefferson doubled the size of the country. But did he though? April 30th, 1803, $15 million. I think this is a vague memory, but I think it came down to like 3 or 4 cents an acre.
Gee whiz.
By the time it was said and done. Yeah.
They were like, we don't want it anymore. Like,
yeah, they're like, I can't handle this. Like, Spain failed. I'm busy. Just do whatever you want. There's nothing there. Like,
ridiculous. Oh no.
I'm sorry, that's a whole lot. That's a lot of nuanced politics and random history events coming together and one ship sinking 50 miles off the Louisiana coast.
I can see why. Well, because whether presidents did, like, they're known for the big things that happened during their presidency, right?
Right.
Whether they really had anything to do with it or not. And
right.
But it does surprise me that Thomas Jefferson really didn't have anything to do with it because of France and his relationship with France.
He does like the French.
He does like the French, or you know, that's what I've heard.
Well, to be fair, the government that he had relationships with in France was no longer in place.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So,
but that's still, like, again, it makes sense.
Right.
But it also, like, I can see
you got to think about it a minute,
because you really got to think about everything that was happening, and I don't do that.
And I don't do that.
I don't do that on my own, really.
Like I said, it is an oversimplification to say that the country expanded because the ship sank, and I don't cut at me. I don't want to hear it, but
I have to agree that the ship sinking was a major player. Basically, like a major like event that happened that, like, if the ship hadn't sank, arguably would that have happened? Like,
right.
That?
Spain might have been able to stabilize.
Yeah.
And the United States wouldn't have cared because Spain had already agreed to allow them to use the port.
Right.
Like, the only reason that Jefferson came down and said we have to buy New Orleans was because he didn't trust the relationship with France to allow them to continue using the port.
Weird piece of Nolans and Louisiana history that I was
not prepared for.
Not prepared for when I called you to ask how your trip was going.
Well, you know what? Blame it on learning about the El Cazador.
El Cazador.
It was a weird place to learn about it. It was a pirate museum. I was not anywhere near the coast. But
so weird.
But they had it was a federal boat. It wasn't a pirate ship, and it wasn't attacked by pirates, so there wouldn't have been the silver. So,
right. Was the silver, like, the main reason it was in this museum? Is that like pirates would have liked this?
Oh yeah,
had they ever found it?
Yeah, I mean, it was very like shipwrecky, treasure in the ocean sort of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, and I did love hearing pieces of 8 in context outside of Pirates of the Caribbean. I do love it, but there's something so cool about hearing that lingo in, I don't want to say real world applications,
but the wild.
In the wild. But if you're like, El Cazador is a thing that you know now.
Cazador.
And I think it's so cool because obviously I'm going to find more little facets of this time frame of history, and the more that you gather of these little events, that's how you get, like, it's the butterfly effect of the butterfly effect.
Right. We do love a context, you know? It's, yeah.
It got a little jumbled in the middle, but we made it.
We made it to the end there. I think
I don't often mix up the dates that badly, but it's the 7 Years' War. That would have put it into the American Revolution if it had started.
Right.
Which is when it ended. Which is also, it's also cool to go back that far because that is where, like, George Washington got his military start. Where a lot of the older officers, I shouldn't say older, a lot of the more experienced officers and soldiers of the American Revolution served on the British side in the 7 Years' War.
Oh my gosh.
This is a whole other story. Yeah, put that in your context bank.
Brain.
So you're going to be thinking all day about George Washington serving as a British officer in the 7 Years' War, and I'm going to be thinking all day about somebody having the audacity to tell me that he was a redhead.
Someone had the audacity. And that his little buddy was a redhead too. Are you
his little buddy?
His little buddy.
Oh, there would be so many people mad if they heard that.
Yeah, well, all
right. Well, I'm going to go fortify the defenses against that.
Okay.
talk again real soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye.